So why do we need a Bill of Rights? To understand that, we've got to go way back to 1776. That's right, a little bit of history here. The foundation of America. You see, in 1776, that's when the Declaration of Independence was written. That's right, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Ben Franklin sat down and wrote this thing to England, to the king specifically. You see, the founders didn't really want to break free from England, but because there had been so many violations of their foundation, fundamental rights, human rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, by the king, by the government, we said enough is enough, we're breaking free. And so, we break free, we fight the revolution, we win. It's amazing, it's unbelievable. We set up a new government. The new government is called the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation give the power to the states, and the federal government, the national government, doesn't have much power at all. In fact, they don't have an executive branch, somebody to enforce the laws. They don't have a judicial branch, somebody to interpret the laws. All they have is a legislative branch, a Congress. And so they make a few laws, but there's nobody there to enforce it. The federal government is very weak. Long story, a lot of history here, but the Articles are a disaster. It doesn't work out for anybody. You have states fighting each other. Nobody really wants to accept U.S. dollars, the Articles of Confederation money. Instead, you have like people taking, New York money is no good in Virginia. And that was no good for growing the economy. It was no good for fighting off enemies, and you had states fighting. Okay, so we get to the Constitutional Convention. We start a new country. Now we're going to be a federalist system. What we have to do, though, is give the government, the federal government, the national government, a lot more power. And so I like to use some visual aids when I'm in class, but I can't be in class right now. And so we have the government sword. I don't know if you can see that right there. The government, the sword, the power of the federal government, and it just got a lot bigger. How you feeling? Well, if you remember in the Declaration of Independence, one of the things it laid out, besides people having, fundamental rights, natural rights, is that human nature has a tendency to, power can corrupt, and governments can become very powerful and tyrannical. The whole reason we're breaking away from England is because the king was violating the rights. And so we're very nervous about government power, which is why the Articles were so weak. That didn't work. So our new government, the Constitution, had a bigger sword. But with a bigger sword, people were nervous. Remember the first question I said, why do we need a Bill of Rights? If the government has a big sword, the people need a big shield. And these are the visual aids I use in class. I come and I usually have somebody hold that, and I say, hey, do you think you have the freedom of speech? What happens if the government comes to take it away? With your Bill of Rights shield. Now, if you don't know your rights, see, some people are ignorant. They don't know their rights. They'll say they have rights, but if they don't know their rights, if you don't know your rights, do you really have a shield? If you don't know that the government can't do certain things, could this thing slip away? Could the government come and can maybe come slip around, or maybe you drop? You gotta own it. Each generation has to own liberty. They have to own freedom. And so that's what the Bill of Rights, why they're there. The Americans didn't trust that the government was always going to be willing to protect their rights, to secure their rights, the main role of government. Sure, maybe they trusted George Washington, but, they thought there might be a day where we have a government power that really tries to take over like a king again and just make laws and say we're coming in and, you don't have the right to a fair trial. You don't have the right to due process. You don't have the right to bear arms. You don't have the right to freedom of speech, to worship. You don't have the right. They wrote it down on purpose. The Bill of Rights is a shield to protect you from other citizens taking that, but really the Bill of Rights is there to protect you from the government taking away your rights. Right? If you look at the Bill of Rights, it talks about the government shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or to assemble, or petition. That's just the First Amendment, right? It talks about the government shall make no law. No soldier shall in a time of peace be quartered in any house. That's the Third Amendment. It talks about the Second Amendment. It says the regulated militia and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Again, all these rights, I could go through the whole thing. You've got them in front of you. It talks about what the government shall not do. What the government, with their sword, with the government power, what they cannot do to break free. So that's the reason we have the Bill of Rights. I want you to study them and to know them, because if you don't know your rights, then anything can happen. If you don't know your rights, then maybe the government can just take your rights. You have to own it. You gotta know it. That's the reason, the purpose for the Bill of Rights.